Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Maisa Sheni, Perek Beis, Halacha Gimel. We're learning today Daf Chai, by Daf Yud Ches, and we left off in the middle of the second line from the top of the Amid, Sela Shal Maisa Sheni V'Shal Chulin. Quickly recapping the beginning of our Mishnah, the Mishnah began speaking about a batch of Maisa Sheni coins that got intermingled with a batch of Chulin coins, both of them falling on the ground. That was the case of the Mishnah. And the Mishnah differentiated between two cases as we will further develop the understanding of the Mishnah today and the Gemara, that if the coins were mamish, mingled all together, there was bila. When you pick the coins up, it's highly unlikely, really highly unlikely, that you only picked up the Meiser Sheni coins because they all got mixed up together. And not only that, is when you pick them up, you did not pick them up one at a time. You picked up a group, a bunch at a time. That adds to the improbability that all that you gathered in your hand was only from the Meiser Sheni. So indeed, over there we say that proportionate to whatever the ratio of Meiser Sheni and Chulin, accordingly, we're gonna say, as the example that we gave out yesterday, that you started out with 100 Meiser Sheni coins, 200 Chulin coins, total 300 coins. When they fell on the ground, you lost 30. We're gonna say that the 30 that was lost is equally attributed, proportionally, a third of it to Meiser Sheni and 2/3 of it of Chulin. But if the Mishnah said in the Reisha, they fell, and you picked up one coin at a time, and as we'll see today, and there's a possibility. It's not, I know it's not highly likely, but there's a possibility that what you picked up one by one was Meiser Sheni. There's such a possibility. So indeed, the Chachamim said that that's exactly what we do. The first 100 becomes Meiser Sheni. All of the remainder become Chulin, which would mean that if there is a loss of 30, all of the 30's loss goes to the Chulin. And then we learned Amara Fulda that we'll see today in the Gemara. Of course, even though it's possible, we're not saying that the first 100 were the original 100. We know that it's possible that it's not. So we have to make this stipulation as we're going to come back today in the Gemara with more details. This is where we left off yesterday. This Mishnah is Mamish Gavaldik. Today we're beginning in contrast, and one part of the Mishnah, Mamish sheds a lot of light on the other. You have two coins only. And there's a big nafkamina because of that. One Chulin, one Meiser Sheni. Same concept, they got mixed up. You don't know which one is which. So the Mishnah is going to tell us that in this case, you take, listen to this, my friends, copper coins in the value of a sela. Let's say it was a silver sela, Chulin, silver sela, Meiser Sheni. And they got mixed up. You're going to take copper coins, and even that will clarify in the Gemara how much value of the copper coins. And you make the following stipulation. Whichever one of these two are the Meiser Sheni silver coins, may its Kedusha be deconsecrated on the copper coins. And then you take from these two silver coins, the one that's the least eroded, because when coins erode in the days of old, they lost a little bit of value. We're talking about prutas. Doesn't matter. You take the one that's the most valuable of the two, not because that was the one that we know was Meiser Sheni. We don't know which one was Meiser Sheni. And then we make another step of deconsecration from the copper onto the silver. In other words, what the Mishnah will introduce today is that outside Yerushalmi, let me add, even though that's not written explicitly, outside Yerushalmi, you never go from silver to silver. Even b'di'evid, you're not allowed to go from silver to silver. Outside Yerushalmi, b'di'evid would be like in our case. You have two coins, you don't know which one is which. If you have to be machalal coins on coins, you can go from silver to copper. Now, I'll say this again when we learn the Gemara. This is dafka outside Yerushalayim, and I'll explain why. In Yerushalayim is the place where you actually spend the money to buy food. We all know this, my friends. There are many markets, maybe even today, that it's better for you not to go in there with a $100 bill. Not everyone will have change. If you're actually buying food, sometimes it's better for you to come into the store with smaller nominations. Copper is smaller. If I want to buy a banana, I'm not going to come with a silver seller. I'll come with a pruta from copper. So in Yerushalmi, there's no problem. I want to make that clear. The thing is that the Mishnah is also talking about outside Yerushalmi because it got mingled. So we're going to have this concept that outside Yerushalmi, lechatchila b'chlal, don't deconsecrate coins on coins. That's vadai. Silver on silver, not even b'di'evet. Silver on copper, yes, b'di'evet. What about silver on gold? Why would you deconsecrate silver on gold? The whole reason why the Torah tells you that you can deconsecrate the produce onto money is because it's too heavy to carry the produce. I can say the same logic to silver and gold. Gold, like if I'm going to Yerushalmi, I don't want my pocket, my wallet to weigh too much. Gold has more value. So more of silver is equal less on gold. So taka machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And Beis Hillel will say you could go from silver to gold for the reason that I said. Beis Shammai, even there, Beis Shammai says you shouldn't do that. And that's going to be a big, important part of the mission that we're going to learn today. Same value. Even though Shleima, you don't know how you hit it on the head. Wait, there is a nuance that's important. The Gemara is going to go back to the Reisha of the Mishnah that we just reviewed. The Reisha of the Reisha, where groups of coins, like we said, 100 Ma'aser Sheni, 200 of Chulin, fell on the ground. And even though the Mishnah said in the Reisha that when you pick up one coin at a time, that we say that the Masha Liket Ma'aser Sheni, the first 100, one by one is Ma'aser Sheni, and V'hashar L'chulin, which means that we're going to, if there is a loss, Ma'aser Sheni won't lose. The Gemara is going to give us two very important qualifications. Only after we learn the Gemara, we will be clear in what we learned yesterday, and we'll understand clearly the difference between what we learned yesterday and the first case of the Mishnah today, where it's just two coins. Because when you begin learning it, some people know the word, some people don't know the words. In the beginning, es stimmt nicht what we're going to learn today to what we learned yesterday. So that's going to be gewaldig. I want to say a few nuances that are unique about today's daf. First of all, I once heard a gewaldige shir from Rabbi Schachter, Shlita from YU, regarding that which by us, we just say it. And what we say is correct, but it's not that correct, which is that Amoraim cannot argue with Tanoim. That's the way I was brought up, and it's correct, but there's nuance to it. From the Bavli, people know Rav Tanu Palik. Be'emes, logically, don't forget, who was the contemporary of Rav in Eretz Yisrael? Rabbi Yochanan. And even in the Bavli we have, I just don't remember if it's as often. Rabbi Yochanan, at times, if need be. And then we also, I remember learning about Ilfa. I remember this from the Bavli. In other words, in the Yerushalmi, it's even clearer. Don't forget, the Yerushalmi was compiled 100 or 200 years before the Bavli. In the earlier generations of the Amoraim, it's nicht gefährlich for an early Amoira to argue with the Tana. This is something, a nuance, because we're going to have today a machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Chizkiah regarding Bila. That's what we explained yesterday. That in the Seifa of the Reisha, the last case we learned yesterday, that if the money falls on the floor and you mix them and then you scoop them up. So the Mishnah says that the same ratio based on the rule of even blending. That's the English attach of Bila. Bila means that when things get mingled, they are evenly mingled. So like the proportion, if we said if it's a third Ma'aser Sheni and 2/3 Chulin, if they were mixed up together, if you hold of Bila, then when you gather a bunch, you can say that a third of what you gathered was Ma'aser Sheni, b'diyuk, and 2/3 Chulin. Really, it's a machlekes Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan whether Bila is only said by liquids. Everyone holds that by liquids, by oil, by wine, by all liquids, yesh Bila, where you can see that. When it comes to solids, that's a machlekes. And as we will see that our Mishnah, Vadai, will go against Chizkiah. So in the Bavli, there's a kasha. In the Yerushalmi, it's not even a kasha. Say that. In other words, we're going to see today that Chizkiah can argue with the Mishnah. Doesn't bother us. It's better if it can go together. Chizkiah, who says that there is no Bila by solids, for sure argues with the Mishnah. I'm saying the words. And Rabbi Yochanan maybe argues with the Mishnah, as we'll see. And the final topic we'll learn today is, let's go back to this eroded coin. And let's say a seller is worth $100, a silver seller. Now, part of the value of the coin, of course, there was a stamp and there was a king, and that was the government that's worth $100. but Bamed Dvarim Amurim, that the coin is wholesome. The more you use the coin, the more it gets eroded. Huh? Or it has a hole. And it was common that people still accepted eroded coins, but at some point, however, they knew it, they saw it, they weighed it, $99. It lost some of its value. It circulated, it lost some of its value. And what we're going to open up today, which we'll continue into tomorrow, which is another phenomenal topic. Can you, B'chlal, use an eroded coin when it comes to the redemption or to the deconsecration of Meiser Sheni? And the answer is yes, you could. And we'll see that we go lekula. Don't forget, coins are used twice. Both when you have the original produce and you are deconsecrating it on the coin. So let's say I have a eroded coin. So now we're gonna say that even though be'emes, this coin is only in the market worth $99, since it's a seller 100, I will be allowed to say that I can take $100 worth of Meiser Sheni and put it on the coin. That's a leniency, not towards Meiser Sheni, towards me. And again, we can be lenient on the other end, that when I go into Yerushalmi and HaKodesh, by the way, there's no other option, and I go into a market, no Yerushalmi will give me the value of $100 of food for an eroded coin. Doesn't matter. Even though when I'm going to use the coin, I'm only getting in exchange the current lesser value. That's the way we do it, as we'll see. Okay. Having said all of that, Chevra Daf Yutches. Sure. Yes.
Move my Sheni. Forget a mixture. Let's say I had $100 of my Sheni in my pocket and I lost it. Do I not have any obligation to?
So that's real. So the Gabe, whoever didn't hear, based on what we quoted last week, which is so important, the machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos, Kedushin, Bavli, Nun Vav Amud Aleph, that this concept of stipulating, which is very much related to our Mishnah, we're going to get into details. The case that we began, we introduced this topic that I used Meiser Sheni coins. I bought something which legally I'm not allowed to buy. So we learned that the sale is a sale. Some cases, the sale is a sale. But since I was not allowed to buy that, the deconsecration part didn't work, which means that the living animal that I bought, that would be one case, or the Eved that I bought, doesn't have Kedushas Meiser Sheni, even though he belongs to me because I paid money. Where we don't say mekachtos. The problem is that the seller of the Eved has now, let's say I paid $100. He has $100 that is really only Meiser Sheni. So when the Mishnah says Yei ochel kenegdan, so the way Rashi learns Pshad is exactly what you're saying, Danny. And I'm gonna apply to your case that I have to take out of my pocket $100, and we're gonna learn a lot of details about that right now. You can't go from silver to silver. It's not so pashut outside Yerushalayim. And I make a declaration, the money out there, which is what you're saying, wherever it is, its kedusha should be deconsecrated on this money. L'chu'ura, I would say. If I have Meiser Sheni that I lost, why should I not have to do the same thing? I think so. Certainly, it's vaday midas chasidus to do it. Whether you're chayiv, I don't know. The difference is that if I lost it, I can argue no one found it. In the case that I just mentioned, the moicher, I know the seller has in his hands money. He thinks the money is chulin. He's going to buy food outside Yerushalayim, and he's violating the commandment of using Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. Masha Enkin, when I lost it, maybe I can say no one will find it. So I don't know if you're chayiv or not, but vadai, that would be a thing to do. For sure, that will be a good thing to do. Okay, let's dive inside. So guys, Yutches, 2 lines from the top. And we're going to come back to what we learned yesterday. You're going to see the difference. If you have questions, you're asking good questions. Here, we're speaking about only 2 coins. A silver sella of Meiser Sheni, a silver sella of Chulin, and they got mingled in your pocket. They fell, I don't care where. You don't know which one is which. Sella shall Meiser Sheni, v'shal Chulin shenesarvu. And I'm going to add, because of what we'll learn later, a detail of the Mishnah is because you are outside Yerushalayim. Now that we already learned, I just quoted the Ye'ochel Kenegdam L'shitas Rashi. Now that we learned Tamara Fulda yesterday, that V'yisna. Okay, so there's a solution. No, what would be the non-solution, Aviv? The non-solution would be, it's half and half. You have to spend both coins in Yerushalayim for food. It won't be the end of the world if someone is anyways planning to spend that money, but we prefer not to do that. Why should we add? No, when you have no way out, that would be the way out. You get it? You have 2 coins. You don't know which one is which, so spend both. But no, we don't have to do that. What do? So maybe sela mo'ois, guys, mo'ois means copper. Now you have to know denomination. So I'm just giving a 6. It could be, but it doesn't matter, whatever the number is. I take, let's say 6 copper coins have the same value of, I'll give in English, you have a $100 sela, you take 100 copper coins that Trump took out of circulation. You take the, in other words, you take copper coins that have the same value of the silver coin. Parenthetically, not to get confused, we didn't learn it yet in the Mishnah, but we know from the Chumash that if the owner is the one that's doing the deconsecration, he has to add the Chumash a 5th milabar, which is really 25%, not 20%. The Rambam clearly states that if you are going from money to money, even the owner does not have to add the 25%. Could be that Rambam got it from the fact that the Mishnah doesn't say it, even though that's not a proof, because many times the Mishnah doesn't have to go through every single step every single time, because one teaches to the other. Like when we learned yesterday about in the Marafuld of making a stipulation, we never learned about the silver copper. And we will actually apply this to what we learned yesterday if what you're doing is outside Yerushalmi. Important. But let's come back over here. So you take copper coins that have the same value of the seller. And the first statement is, V'omer, that's the stipulation. You don't know which one of the two silver is Meiser Sheni. Doesn't matter. That seller shall Meiser Sheni b'chol makim shehi, whichever one of the two it is, I don't know which one. Say that the kedusha of it is michuleles al hamoy so'elu, should be deconsecrated on these copper coins which have the same value. I'm going to add right now, don't jump. Ben Azai says you have to bring copper coins double the value. And we'll get to that today. Ben Azai is not going against the Mishnah, but it's a detail that Ben Azai felt the Mishnah doesn't have to say. And just shelve that. Okay, so I'm going back with my numbers. You have a seller of silver worth $100. You take 100 pennies, not $100, Fadrei, $1. You have a seller coin worth $1. You have two sellers, but only one is Meiser Sheni. And let me go before Ben Azai. You take 100 pennies, copper pennies, and you make that statement. Silver into copper. Why silver to copper? As we will see, that even b'di'evid, you're not allowed to go from silver to silver. Inside Yerushalayim, lechatchila, you can go from silver to copper because it's common that when you buy food, if you bring larger nominations, you break it down. Many people here, they take a $100 bill, they break it into 520s. It's better that way. You're buying little food, a little bit at a time. But outside Yerushalayim, you shouldn't do it. You are allowed to do it. And actually, that's the only way you can do it, because since you cannot go from silver to silver, you go from silver to copper. We don't say, it doesn't matter. That's the way to do it. But you don't stay with the copper. You're not allowed to park the copper. Now that you have copper, now you have to go back to the silver. What silver are you going back to? To one of the two that you have. So now the Mishnah adds another nuance. If the two silver coins that you had, one of them is less eroded than the other, one of them is better, like we said in the introduction, one is taka worth 100, one is worth only 99, even though I don't know which one was which. It could be that the Meiser Sheni was the eroded one. Doesn't matter. Now that you're going back, you have to pick the better one, which will be limiting to the owner, which means that the one that is Yotza L'chulin, which he can use anywhere, has a little bit less value. In other words, you lean towards the side of the benefit of Meiser Sheni.
All right, the copper is only transactional.
Only transactional. It's going through the copper. It's not going to end up in the copper.
One coin.
Not one coin. No. That has to be the same value of.
But it's just for a second of transaction.
It doesn't matter. Kevan, nowadays, that anyways, we cannot eat the Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. You're right. We are able to be mechalal the value of the produce on a coin, even though the coin is less than the value of the food, exponentially less. But in the times that the Mishnah, we're speaking about people that are eating the food in Yerushalayim, every act of deconsecration has to be value on value.
Thank you.
And now, you pick the better of the two silver coins, and you right away, how are you machalal? Verbally. You make a declaration. that the kedusha that's on the pruta coins should go on this coin. Umechalalan alehon. Now, why do you have to go? Why are you going from to copper? Why don't you just take a third silver coin? Or I'll tell you better.
Who needs a third one?
Who needs a third one? Take these two coins and say, if this one was Ma'aser Sheni, L'chaim, if the other one was Ma'aser Sheni, may it be deconsecrated on this. So the Mishnah says, Mepnei Sha'amru, because the Chachamim said that even though Mechalal in Kesev al Nechoshes midoichak b'di'evid, in a case of pressing need, for example, our case, they got mixed. And you don't want to designate both for Ma'aser Sheni. You want to spend money right now outside Yerushalmi. So midoichak, you are allowed to go from kesef to nechoshes, which implies even midoichak, you're not allowed to go from silver to silver. We don't want for you to start deconsecrating money on money. They didn't want that. The original produce on money, the trader says you could. Using the money in Yerushalayim on food, the trader says you do. But to start going from money to money to money to money, they didn't want you to do it. There's a pressing need. So to remember that you can't do it from money to money unless there's a need, when you do it on the choshes. We're going to get to gold in a moment. Now, what does this shed light? I want to say one detail, without even going back, that when we learned the Marafulda, that is really quoting the today's Gemara, that in the Reisha, in the first case of the Mishnah, the Reisha of the Reisha, where when you're malakit one by one, masha liket likad l'maiser sheni, all the rest is chulin. You have to make a stipulation. What's your stipulation? Maybe some of the shar that's chulin, maybe some of those coins were maiser sheni. Maybe they are. So we said, you make a stipulation that the kedusha should go from that to this. That you are in Yerushalayim Eretz Kodesh. If you are outside Yerushalayim Eretz Kodesh, then you also have to bring in the copper. In other words, whenever you do an act of chilul outside Yerushalayim, we're just learning a new detail, whether it's in the case that we learned now and in every other case. Outside Yerushalayim, whenever you make a stipulation, it has to go through copper. So it makes it, you have to add another step. You have to have the coins, you have to make the declaration on the copper. No, we're going to learn today, Ben Azza, you have to double the value of the copper, Fregnish. And then you go from the copper back into the silver.
My regular produce, putting it on the coins outside of Yerushalayim, whatever, it's sauce.
Yes.
Is there a requirement that those coins be silver or that could be copper?
Makes no difference. Very good, Dan. Makes no difference. Makes no difference what you put it on. But once you put it on coins, leave it on the coins. Now, why am I saying leaving it on the coins? Actually, what the Gabbai is saying is what the Mishnah is addressing. What happens if I put it on copper? Can I go from copper to silver? Or in our Mishnah is going to go from silver to gold. Here, lebesilul, you could. In other words, if the reason why you are changing denomination is because the denomination is because you want to go to Yerushalayim with less weight, lebesilul taka, you're allowed to do it. Masha'enkin, if it's the same weight, why are you doing it? Vada, if you're going down on the weight. So hold on. Now that
market, you buy something in Yerushalayim. That
I just said in Yerushalayim lachatchila, I just said, I'll say it again. That this whole Mishnah is only outside Yerushalayim. I chapped it yesterday. In Yerushalayim lachatchila, you can not only can you get change copper in Yerushalayim. If I have a large denomination, a silver seller, I can go into a bank, I can go into my chaver and says, change this for small copper. Lechatchila, not a problem. This is outside Yerushalayim. Outside
Yerushalayim, would you allow to do silver to silver?
Yes. Inside Yerushalayim, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't see that. I would even say maybe yes. Okay, let's go over here. Now, so he said that you can be mechalal kesev on the choishes. But once you did it, even though you did it because you had a halachic, doichak scenario, you're not allowed to leave it on the nechoshes. That's the loy sheyikaim came. Don't leave it the way it is. Right after you put it on the copper, go back to silver. How great is this? Okay. Now, says the Mishnah, what happens if you want to make an exchange? Going to a denomination that's more valuable, which means that weighs less. Beis Shammai understands that outside Yerushalayim, We're not supposed to change money for money. Even if it's going to be less. Wait, you don't want to schlep? Go from the produce to golden coins. Once you put it on money, the next step is in Yerushalayim. Do what you need to do in Yerushalayim. Buy food. It changed the money for other denominations, not outside Yerushalayim, even though you are going to a metal that has greater value, which would mean you're going to have to carry less. But Beis Hillel disagree. Beis Hillel holds that outside Yerushalayim, lechatchila, you can go from silver to gold. Yeah. What can you not do outside Yerushalayim, Beis Hillel, silver to silver? Why are you doing it? And even if there's a doichak, the Chachamim didn't want people to see going from silver to silver. What are you draying? It could be that in Yerushalayim there's no restrictions. But why would you do from silver to silver? Maybe not also. I don't know why you would do it. You would go to copper. I understand why. Shlem is adding another thing, is that since when it comes to coins, like we just mentioned, you have eroded coins, you have less eroded coins, not everyone chaps it. Could be you're going to actually be making a loss to Meiser Sheni. Leave it the way it is.
Wait, so for the coins, so was there not like a set value for coin?
Yes and no. Yeah, no. Today, this detail of eroded coins does not exist. Today, you might have a torn bill that some vendors won't want to accept at all. But there isn't such a thing that if my dollar is a little bit ripped, a guy says, you know what, I'm going to accept it, but I'm only going to give it the value of 99 cents. That does not exist today. In those days, if the coin was damaged, it had a little bit of a lesser value. And maybe in the bank it didn't. It had a lesser value in the market. That will explain the end of today's stuff.
Also, are you, outside Yerushalayim, are you allowed to convert it from silver to copper?
No, even Beis Hillel only b'doichak, only if there's a pressing need, like in our Mishnah, or like we learned last week, like I just quoted. I bought something, I was not allowed to buy it. I have to save the seller from violating. I brought upon the seller a michshol. There, I have to do it like this. If I gave him silver coins, I have to take copper, I have to put it on the copper, and then I can right away put it back on my new silver. Okay. Now, Amar Rabbi Akiva, there are times that we learn that even when certain behaviors are halachically permissible, there is a logic to say at times that the representatives of the community, that the Chachamim, have to abide to a higher standard. We have this at times, not because that is the letter of the law. If the people that are representing observance go at least a little bit lifnim mishuras hadin, then people will say, I'll at least go like the din. Based on that, one might have thought, Beis Hillel, you can go from silver to gold, but maybe the Chachamim should not do it. So Amar Rabbi Akiva, let me tell you a story. That Ani Yosisi leRabban Gamliel v'Rabbi Yeshua's Kaspon din reizov, that I lechatchila did this exchange for them. There's no chiddush in saying Aviv that we paskin like Beis Hillel. There is a chiddush to tell you that this is something so permitted leBeis Hillel that we don't even expect Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua to hold to a higher standard. We paskin silver to gold is allowed to be done lechatchila. Why? The whole reason why the Torah says I can exchange produce on money, kiloi suchal se'esoi. So that kiloi suchal se'esoi goes on the same thing. Silver weighed. See, our dollar bills don't weigh. If it weighs, it's good. At least you have a few dollars in your pocket. I'm saying there the coins was a schlep. If a person has, the difference between silver and gold. Look at today's market. What's the gold? What's the silver? Crazy, huh? What, 2,000% more? No, that's a guzma. But it's many hundreds. That means that today 100 silver, where you'll get not even one gold. It will be easier to carry. Lechatchila, you can do it. Okay, so let's begin. The Gemara now is going back to the case that we learned yesterday. Not 1 and 1, dafka a batch, and they fell on the ground. And remember the ratios, just to be consistent. 100 chulin 200 Meiser Sheni. So the way we worded it correct, but it was very superficial. If you gathered one by one, so the Mashaliket LaMeiser Sheni Vashar Chulin. If Balal v'Chafnan, if you mix them and you scoop them, then proportionate. Why? Like, why? Be consistent. There's a logic to say always that proportionate. If 30 coins were lost, okay, so we say that from the 30, 10 of Meiser Sheni was lost. Bottom line, that would mean that 90 coins have to be used for. Why don't we say that? No, we're saying no, like it's to the side of Meiser Sheni. 100 is Meiser Sheni. So what's the difference? So Amar
Rabbi,
yes.
don't we do that when we find chicken that was mixed?
Yes.
Non-kosher?
Hold your thoughts. Very good. So Amar Rab Ze'eda, he's such a key player today. Why do we take the approach that Mashaliket likat l'meiser sheni achi yashlim? First, why? We did that kedei l'saker sheni, because the premise, the Chachamim want that meiser sheni should not lose out. Okay. Shema yoivdu ashar. Shema yoivdu ashar is really the case of the Mishnah. In other words, you lost 30 in my example. Well, when coins drop, some of them are lost. But one thing Rab Zaid is making very clear, that Midoi Raisa, Aviv, Midoi Raisa. The Chachamim want to be, there's an exterior reason. Be'emes, Midoi Raisa, even when you pick them up one at a time, we're going to say, let me use these words, that the lost should be absorbed equally. We should say that. That's called Lefi Cheshbon. But that's the beginning. Midrabanan, we say, no, that Mashalikat Likad Achi Yashlim. And the EU Elu Shabiyade Tfusim ala Sheni. But in other words, they Chachamim said that all of the coins that you have in your hand should be imbued with Kedushas, be imbued, meaning I know that it's possible some of what you picked up is Chulin. It should be imbued. And like this, all of the loss goes to the Chulin. In other words, based on what Rab Zeir is saying, that Midoi Raisa, we're going to say that the lost is absorbed equally. We are saying that when you picked a one by one, we're not saying Vadai, every one that you picked up is Meiser Sheni. Could be some of what you picked up is Chulin. So based on that, Amar Rab Zeir, this is the Marafulda that we read, V'tzorech lahasnois v'loimer. You can't just say, well, it's the Chachamim cannot just say, since I don't want Meiser Sheni to lose, I'm declaring it Meiser Sheni. It doesn't work that way. If Midoi Raisa, there is no halachic instrument to conclude every single one was Meiser Sheni. No, I don't know be'emes what every single one is. So what do? You have to make the stipulation. V'loimar, im elu shalamaton sheni. If the ones that are still on the ground are in sheni. Now I want to add a very important detail. What the Gemara is saying now is only something that's allowed to be said in Yerushalmi, where you can go from silver to silver. Then you say, Yihiyu elu shebiyadi tfisim aleim. Then the ones in my hands should be used to deconsecrate the kedusha of the ones on the ground, wherever they are, even the lost ones. That's the law, wherever they are. I definitely could, when they're lost, to make this deconsecration. And let me add, what the Noise Kalim say, and if the case of the Reish and the Mishnah happened outside Yerushalayim to be consistent, and a Chanami, that's the way the Rabbi wrote the Mishnayos, then you have to take copper coins with the value of the whole thing. Because the worst case scenario, Gabbai, is that every single coin that I picked up was Chulin. Is it probable? No, but it's possible. I have to go with that. So I began with 100 Saloyim of my, if they are silver, I have to take before Ben Azai the value of the 100 in copper. According to Ben Azai, I have to take the value of 200 in copper. And I have to, same thing, and I have to say, wherever the Meiser Sheni is, wherever it is, if it's in my hand, Sum Gesund, then I don't need to make my statement. If what I have in my hand is Chulin, which means the Meiser Sheni, in my case 100, is somewhere out there, that should be deconsecrated on the copper. And then I have to have the copper. And then I say, and now another act of deconsecration, the Kedusha of the value of 100 in the copper should be mechulel on the coins that I have in my hand. And you don't have to add a chaimish according to the Rambam, even though it's made by the owner, because money to money never demands a chaimish.
Get up one by one. Get up and up.
Now we're going to add this detail. Amar Rabbi Yoina. In other words, be'emes, that's the big question. What's the difference? The Mishnah said, likate, balal. What's the nafkamina? Now he will shed the light. Amar Rabbi Yoina. Now, I want to tell you something that the Gemara doesn't even have to say. It's a given that when monies are, what's the words of the Reish of the Mishnah? How did the Mishnah begin? That you had mois shenispazru. Shenispazru means what happens right now. If you have coins in your hand on the table and they fall down, they scatter. So it's a given when coins scatter. Scattering means they didn't land in one place. It's a big nafkamina. Let me word it like this, Gabai. If the coins fell on the ground in a way where when they landed, they did not nispazru, they did not scatter, which means it's possible that all of the coins are in one place, then the rule of the Mishnah will not be the way we have it right now. The rule of the Mishnah is only because they did not land in one place. The gathering 1-1, just to make it clear also in the Mishnah, is not 1-1 from the same place. I'll tell you why. Because when you gather from the same place, why would you gather 1-1? Like you're doing exercise. Pick a chafina. Chafina means a handful. Likta echad echad means you gathered one here, you gathered one there, you gathered one here, you gathered one there.
When we talk about Gilel in the beginning of the Mishnah,
Very good.
is that in both cases it's Gilel?
No, very good. Now, you know what's really, it's not so much about the 1-1. It's not so much about the 1-1 versus chafina. Well, it's about the bila. In other words, in the case of the Reisha, since the money was nispazru and you're picking it up scattered, Danny, there is a possibility that what you picked up was only Ma'aser Sheni. When are the Chachamim machmer by telling you that legally Mashaliket has to be liket l'Ma'aser Sheni by making the Tanai? Why do you do that? Because there's a certain possibility that what you picked up was Taka Ma'aser Sheni. Why is that? Because they scattered. Both scattered, but the Ma'aser Sheni also scattered. You didn't pick it up from one place. If you would have picked it up from one place, Danny, where you for sure did not only pick up Ma'aser Sheni, Rabbi Yoina is saying, even in the Reisha, we would say that the loss should be evenly distributed. Lefi cheshbon. It's only because they scattered, and the likton achas means that you picked up one from here, one from there, one from here, one from there. There was some sort of possibility that what you picked up was taka only Ma'aser Sheni. In the Sefer, you mixed them up, and you picked up many at a time. Halachically, we say, to say that everything in your hand was only Ma'aser Sheni, the chances are much lowered. Mashe'enkein. Let me go this way. When you pick up 1-1, even if you mix them, it's still possible that you picked only the Ma'aser Sheni. It's once there is I don't know where the threshold is. Once there is a possibility that what you picked up is only Ma'aser Sheni, the Chachamim will say a chumrah that Masha liket the Ma'aser Sheni and make the Tanai. If the way you picked it up there's always a possibility, but it's already ridiculous. It's preposterous to say that you mixed it and you picked up a lot at a time, and every single one in your hand was only Ma'aser Sheni. Once that's not what happened, then we divide the loss equally. This is beautiful. Let me read it inside. Again, they scattered. Scattered means they did not fall in one place. Ma'aser Sheni did not fall in one place. And when you picked up, you did not pick it up from one place. You picked it up from all over the place. Therefore, it's possible, I know it's not probable, but at least it's halachically possible that you picked up only Ma'aser Sheni. Avalim liket al oyman. Oyman means from one place, from one row. It means if the coin scattered and you picked it up from one row, here also I'm going to argue, not because you scooped. It's not about scooping. Even if you picked up one at a time, to say that every single one that you picked up from the same place was Ma'aser Sheni, come on. When coins fall, they scatter. The Ma'aser Sheni was not in one place. So then that will be kib boilel v'chayfenu, which would mean that we don't say mashaliket l'maiser sheni. We won't say that, even though you picked up 1-1, we're going to say lefi cheshboin. And daf yud ches on the base, we have to move a little bit quicker. Okay, good. Now we mentioned this in the intro. The whole concept, not in the ratio of the ratio, in the safe of the ratio. That if balal v'chafan lefi cheshboin. Why lefi cheshboin? Because only because we apply the halacha of yesh bila to solids. Be'emes it's a machloikis. And who is the machloikis? On one side is Rav Pedoya and Chizkiya, and on the other side is Rabbi Yechanan. So Rabbi Yosi b'shem Rav Pedoya and Rabbi Yechanan b'shem Chizkiya hold that ain't belila. We don't apply the rule of even blending, only by liquids. Ella b'yayin v'shemen bilvad be'emes. It's not yayin v'shemen. It's by all lach. Why do they mention yayin v'shemen? Because we're speaking about trumas u'maisris, and for sure midai raisa. Trumas u'maisris is shaykh to tirash v'yitzer, to wine and oil. To other juices, lav dafket applies biblically. But be'emes, it doesn't mean that. It means davar lach, everyone holds to bila. I'm just going to quote Chizkiya. Really, it's also Rav Pedoya. They hold that what? That we never say that by solids. They clearly argue with the Mishnah. They would never say lefi cheshboin. And I want to tell you something. Once you don't say lefi cheshboin, in my understanding, then you have to put everything to meiser sheni. That's the only solution. And v'yisna. You understand? Elohim Shalom Levad. Rabbi Yochanan is the one that says that I apply the instrument, the halachic instrument or the halachic rule of bila, even by solids, only if the solids are very little. Like by grains, we say it. By quinoa, you say it. But what's the ceiling? Ad kezesim nivlolim. Only if they are up to the size of a kezayis. Once they are in the size of a kezayis, even Rabbi Yechanan will hold that we don't say bila. Now, coins, my friends, the Mishnah did not differentiate between large and small coins. There are coins smaller than a kezayis. There are coins bigger than a kezayis. So we're going to have a problem. In other words, the way the Penei Moshe says beferish. Chizkiya argues with the Mishnah. I know these words sound strange to us Babylonians. But to the Yerushalmis, Chizkiya was an Amayda from the earlier generation, Tanu Palik. The Gemara doesn't even mention Chizkiya. The question is, will we have to say that even Rabbi Yechanan argues with the Mishnah? So l'choyra masnisa pligal Rabbi Yechanan. Why? Because since the Mishnah says in Balal v'chafan lefi cheshbain, the Mishnah does not differentiate what size coin. So the Mishnah, not Chizkiya, not Rabbi Yechanan, will agree with the Mishnah. Says the Gemara lav dafke that you're right. Chizkiya will argue with the Mishnah, but Rabbi Yechanan pasalah at kezeisim that the Mishnah Rabbi Yechanan is only speaking about small coins. Let's go back to the late. Then the Mishnah said that was the last line we learned yesterday. Actually, in our Girsa in the Mishnah it says Zajac. And what? Zaklal, we learned that Asherilio, not only by coins, also by produce, that Hamislaktim, that if you gather them one by one, like we just explained, where there is some sort of chance, let's say 10%, not 0.01%, let's say even 1%, not 0.0001, that every single one you picked up to Meiser Sheni, the Chachamim said, Hamislaktim la Meiser Sheni, v'hanivlanim l'fi cheshbon. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi berabun, b'shem Rabuni as a kasha. I'm sorry, the Mishnah's kasha is really on the Sefer. It says that in Balal v'chafan, lefi cheshbain. And when the Mishnah said Zeh haklal, you know what the Mishnah should have said? Not only hanivlolim, because even Danny, when you mix them together, if you pick them up one at a time, it's still possible you only picked up to Meiser Sheni. We added that detail that both you mixed it. And you make a scoop. So the Mishnah l'choyra should have said by the Zahaklal that hanivlolim v'hanechpanim is lefi cheshbain. The Mishnah did not say those words. So that's a problem. So the Gemara says you have to put it in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yosi berabun b'shem Rabhuna. Salkas masnisa. Complete the Mishnah. Complete it. The Mishnah didn't say it because who knows what else went into Rabbeinu HaKadosh's wording of the Mishnah. That's meduyak b'yoset. But really, it's hanivlalim b'hanechpanim lefi cheshboin. Like that was the whole chiddush of today's daf. That even if you mix them together, if you pick them up 1-1, there's always enough of a halachic possibility that every single one that you picked up was meiser shein, even though it's a very low probability. Once you have that, the chachamim kedei l'saker meiser sheini would say that liket l'maisa sheni. It's only both. You mix them and you scoop them. Now, selo shemaisa sheni v'shalchon mois. And the Mishnah learned that I kept on saying you bring $100, you bring 100 pennies. No, Tane, we learned in a Braisa. Ben Azai says, you know what you do, Aviv? If you have $1, a sell of $1, you know how many copper coins you have to bring? 200 pennies. Now, by the way, you're not deconsecrating it on 200. You're not doing that. You know what you're saying? You're saying 100 from the 200 copper coins should have the kedusha of Ma'aser Sheni. You're not doubling the copper. The kedusha is only one sela silver, not 2 seloim. But the quantity of copper has to be double. And you are lechatchila making a mixture. You are lechatchila making a mixture. Now, Tani ben Azai yoim shtayim. You have to bring 2 seloim's worth of copper coins onto which to deconsecrate. Now, why would you have to do that? Why would you have to do that? So here, Ma'aseh Metacholim. Rab Zaida says, Rab Zaida had a dream. He had a dream. What did he dream? I'll tell you this by heart. He dreamt in his dream that Ula bar Yishmael came to him. And he, in his dream, Rab Zaida gave him a geshmaka steak. The next day, Ula ben Yishmael came to him and he asked him, what's the reason behind Ben Azai? Rab Zaida gave him a gewaldige explanation. And he says, and that was my dream. What do you think meat is? Meat is not meat. In at Tzaddik, the Torah is basar basar. What's the lashon of the Rambam? Before you're matayel bepardes atshemil keresoy bebasar v'yayin, whatever the nusach is, or basar v'lechem. So ma bechelma, I had a dream. What was my dream? That kad yechal ula bar Yishmael kup da shmeina. I fed my chaver Talmud Ula bar Yishmael. I gave him a geshmaka piece of meat. I didn't know what the dream meant. But the next day, this Ula bar Yishmael came to Rab Zaida. Lamachar also Shalei, and he asked him, what's the meaning of Ben Azai? And Rab Zaida gave him a gavaldika answer, and that was the dream. Amalei, and he told him, Lama Shnayim, I'll tell you why. Amalei, since we said, even midoichak, we don't want you to go from silver to copper. We don't want you to do it. You are only allowed to do it because you can never even go from silver to silver. But we don't want you to land on the copper. You know what guarantees that you're going to go from the copper to the silver? You know what guarantees a person doing the second step? If they're going to suffer a financial loss if they won't do the second step. How are they going to suffer a financial loss? If I went from $1 to 100 pennies, there's no loss. Not everyone is going to make the next step. So Ben Azai says to guarantee the next step, you take 200 pennies. Now, how much value do you have on Ma'aser Sheni? Only 100 pennies. So what are you doing? You're saying the Kedusha, whichever one of the $2 is Ma'aser Sheni, should go into 100 of the 200 copper pennies. You're saying that. Which means you are creating a problem. You are creating a scenario where a person is going to have 200 pennies, where only 100 copper pennies have to be used for Ma'aser Sheni. What will that guarantee? That this person will do the next step. He's going to go back from the copper to the silver. And that was the meaning of his dream. Okay,